The Liebherr LTF 1060 is a 60-ton capacity telescopic crane mounted on a standard truck chassis, in this case a Scania truck. The real crane can reach a maximum height of 65 metres, and this model by WSI is in the colours of Sarens. The model comes in a smartly branded Sarens box, but there's nothing to tell you much about the model inside other than a small label which tells you the model type. Inside, the model is factory sealed, and after you split the tape you can lift the lid and hope you've got the box the right way round, and if it's not you have to turn it the other way up. There are no instructions with the model, and inside the box the parts include the crane itself, which is reeved in the factory, and it's quite nicely protected. And the other parts in the box include the fly jib extension, there's a pack of counterweight pieces, and there's also a small bag with quite a few different parts in it. To assemble the model in road-going configuration, there's not too much to do. The counterweight is made in 3 separate pieces and they clip together to produce the counterweight block. And you can rest those on the carrier just ahead of the crane, and there are a couple of little nibs sticking up which the counterweight block can rest on. And once that's in place you can fold down the boom. The other part to fit is the lattice fly jib, and that just rests on 3 holders that are sticking out the side of the boom. And there's also a pin that you can insert at the front, and that secures it to the boom so it doesn't fall off. Once the jib's in place you can reattach the hook to the loop on the front bumper, and then you've got the crane in road-going configuration. The truck chassis is modelled really well, with the suspension and transmission components being excellent. And at the front the gearbox and steering components all look authentic. It's good that the tyre design is different front and rear, and they're mounted on good looking wheels with the wheel nuts clearly detailed. The Scania cab is modelled to a very high standard with excellent lights all round, and the realistic number plate gives it an authentic look. The Sarens colour scheme looks really good, and the fleet number adds an authentic detail. The carrier deck continues the high standard, and the ladders even have black tips to represent rubber feet. At the rear, the towing hitch even has a tiny operating handle, and the lights and signs all add good detail. The modelling of the outriggers is as good as you'll find anywhere, with some excellent warning signs and some hydraulic hoses. The front outrigger beams have storage boxes attached, the pistons are smooth-sided, there's excellent detail at the pads, and there's also a set of plastic spreader plates provided. The detailing on the crane body is also top-notch, with the fuel filler cap having a warning sign, and there are fleet numbers on the counterweight slabs. Things also look good inside the cab, with excellent controls and Liebherr printed on the seat back. The detailing on the boom also maintains the high standard, with metal pulleys and a safety chain. And the paint and graphics on each of the boom sections is very good, with the Sarens name and a 2-tone paint scheme. There's also excellent detailing right down to the small metal hook, which has its own fleet number. The metal fly jib extension is another well-made part which looks great because of its contrasting colour scheme. As usual, we'll give the crane a road trial on the test track first, and it rolls well in a straight line, everything moving smoothly. And looking closer at the wheels, there's some suspension type movement on the rear axles, and you do have some steering on the front axles, but because it's modelled accurately there is really just a limited range of steering. However, if you do set the wheels, then the truck will be able to follow a smooth bend. We'll now move on to set the crane up, and the first thing to do is to pull out the outrigger beams. These are hinged front and rear, and they just pull out and are controlled by little hydraulic cylinders. Once you've got them in position, they are also telescopic and they pull out in a nice smooth action. One aspect worth a close look is the pads at the end of the outrigger beams. They're on a neat mechanism just like the real crane, so that they tuck in for transport, but when you need to set them up then you just slide them over so that the pad is centred under the piston, and then you can pin it into place. That's a great little feature and it works really well, and then when you just unwind the outrigger, the piston extends and you see it's got smooth sides rather than having a screw thread. To complete the realism of the model, plastic spreader plates are included and they just pop under the pads. Once the setup's complete, the boom can be raised and the cylinder that controls it is only moderately stiff. And then it's possible to rotate the crane, which was a little bit stiff on the review model, but that's better than it being too loose. With the crane turned to the side, it's possible to fit the counterweight on the back. The counterweight block just has 2 push-fit clips at the top, and they just push into place when you offer the counterweight up, and that's quite a firm connection. One small point to note where care is required is if you raise the boom to a steep angle, the fly jib can interfere at the back. Extending the telescopic boom is pretty much as you would expect, it just pulls out and you get quite a realistic profile. The winch ropes are snagging a bit because there's really not enough weight on the hook at the moment. Once each section is fully extended, there's the standard locking clip mechanism which locks each section firmly into place. If you want to rig the crane with the fly jib, then you need to disconnect the winch rope and the safety chain, and they're both just pinned into place at the top of the boom. On the real crane, the safety chain operates a cut-off mechanism to stop the hook being wound in too far. One very neat little detail is the shackle at the end of the winch rope, because it has a slot in it, which means that the winch rope can just be lifted off of it because that's just knotted. That's very like the real crane, but on the model you can't pass the knotted rope through the hook, so you have to cut it off anyway, unfortunately. Once you've pulled all the thread through, you can set about fixing on the fly jib. This has a folding section which you pin into place, and you have to use it because there's no pulley at the end of the lattice section. And at the boom end there's a nice little pulley that just raises up to guide the winch rope to the end of the fly section. And there's also a piston control section which allows you to set the fly jib at an angle. Fitting the fly jib onto the end of the boom head is quite straightforward. You just offer it up and then slot in a couple of steel pins which you just push into place. And when that's done, you've got a pretty strong and firm connection. You then just run the thread up through the intermediate pulley up to the top of the fly jib. There's only one free pulley hook supplied with the model, so you have to tie that on and make the best of it if you're lifting off the fly jib. Once the fly jib's on and the boom's extended, it makes an impressive looking model. Let's look now at some of the other features. One of the inclusions with the model is a metal block which can be hung from the hook to provide some extra weight and keep the winch lines taut, and it's effective at doing that. To operate the winch, a special key is provided, and that just slots into the end of the winch drum, and then you just turn that, and the drum has enough friction to be able to support a reasonable load. Another feature that you would expect on a truck model is the tilting Scania cab, and that works here, and you get to see a detailed engine underneath, and that's a pretty nice little feature. And not to be outdone, the crane cab also tilts to give the operator a better view when he's lifting at height. Overall, WSI have produced a very highly detailed model of this Liebherr crane. It's nearly all metal and the features are very good. In particular, the Sarens colour scheme and the many tiny warning notices are really excellent, making this an outstanding crane model.